All right.
I love it. When it first came up, it looked like an old film with the things on the side.
Oh,
And I
yeah,
thought like maybe that was a filter you had on. And I'm like,
yeah.
look at
Going
you.
old school. Old school.
I love it. Nice to talk to you.
You as well. I'm going to close out a couple of windows here. So making sure I've got the right bandwidth and less dings. Give me one more second.
Less dings. It's very official.
Less dings. All right. Focus, do not disturb. Okay, good. Phone is on do not disturb. Computer's all set. I should be good to go. And I can also I can take a little longer too. I can take until I have 30 minutes from right now.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that
When I'm
sounds.
going to leave to pick up Tiger.
Oh, okay. Where is he? School?
School. Yeah.
Got it. Carter's homesick today. I literally caught vomit in my hands this morning at 1:30 in the morning. So, International Women's Day. Watch out for us. We catch vomit in our hands off my kid's bunk bed.
Oh my gosh. Well, it's not a story that one day you'll laugh about like you're laughing about it now. It's awesome.
Like you hear it from the other room. He's like, Mom, and I'm like, oh, that's not good. That's the follow-up call right there.
Mm-hmm.
And there we were. I literally have my hands like this and questioning my life's decisions, right?
Oh my God.
Rug. But what did I do in the meantime, right? Like maybe I should have just let it hit the rug, but there we are.
Instincts. Your mom instincts kicked in.
So true. So true. Well, I'm excited to talk to you. And I want to start by telling you that I just watched the 10-year front row video. It was the first thing I thought when I saw it. Like, look how much hair Jon Vroman.
That's right.
Look at all that hair, man.
Different season of life.
I loved it.
Still not a lot of hair, even when I had hair. It wasn't a lot of hair. It was just more hair. That's all.
It was good. It was good. I actually couldn't have told you what color hair you had until I saw that video.
Yeah, so,
yeah.
It's like, that's funny. So good.
I watched it and it was so affirming for me because, as you know, COVID was an interesting time for front row because essentially we take people at the worst and most vulnerable times in their life and put them in the front row of a live event with a whole bunch of other people around them. And then COVID hits and we're like, we take very immunocompromised, very vulnerable people, and we put them in the front row of a live event with a lot of people during a time with what turns out to be an pandemic situation with a whole lot of disease. And that didn't bode well for the charity or for sort of how we were thinking about what we were doing. And Bex did a phenomenal job of pivoting and talking about virtual experiences and being sort of in the front row of your life and what does this look like. But I think for a while it just didn't feel the same. I mean, nothing in the world felt the same for a little while.
Yeah.
And then when I came on board recently, a lot of what I was thinking was about, gosh, being in the front row is a metaphor. And then I watch your video and you say in the video, being in the front row is a metaphor for life. And I'm like, stop it. Jon Vroman and I are like here. We are like totally in sync, right? And so I just wanted to take a minute and talk to you about that in terms of what was your original motivation behind the Front Row Foundation? What is this metaphor for life that you're talking about? And the third question would be, knowing now 17 years instead of 10 years, right? 7 more years later, what has shifted for you in terms of that original reason why you started Front Row Foundation and your meaning behind where it is now versus what it was for you back then?
Yeah. Well, the impetus in 2005 was very, I think the core of it very simply was wanting to make a difference. Like, you start with this desire to want to make a difference in someone's life. I wish it were more unique to perhaps say that, but at the core of it, in its simplicity, it's that you just have this moment where you check in and you're like, what do I want? What do I need? What would help me feel fulfilled? What gifts do I have that I can share with the world? What does the world need? You just start playing in this space of impact and your, how you fit in to the world. You know, how do you fit in? And that led to, I think that question can take you in a lot of different directions. But for me, it led to two additional questions, which was, well, what do I love and what do I fear? Because I did know enough about my own psychology and perhaps the psychology of a human to know that if I could tap into those two things, the thing that I naturally love and the thing that I might even naturally fear, I will find energy there. I'll find purpose there. I'll find perhaps answers. And so when I asked what I loved, it was when I looked at my life, all the things that I had that brought massive amounts of energy were experiences. They were the stories from a time that myself and some friends perhaps got together and we did this thing that felt like we were truly experiencing the best of life, you know, in those moments. So magic moments was a huge part of what made me come alive as a person. And then what I feared was missing out perhaps on those moments. I feared getting to the end of my life, looking back and saying, I should have taken the trip. I should have said yes to that event. I should have like stepped into the experience. And I didn't want to miss my moments. You know, that was a great fear. So then, I mean, from that point, then I just start asking, well, how could I take those two things, my love of moments and my fear of missing them, and if I play in that space, what shows up? And I'll never forget the day that I remember I was with Jamie Bogger running around the lake downtown, or sorry, running around the Schuylkill River outside of Philadelphia, not a lake, but and it just happened. I said it. I remember I said it out loud. I said front row we could do front row foundation. I don't know if I said front row foundation. I was like, we could do a charity where we put people in the front row of their favorite event. And then it was like the stream of ideas just started flowing. It was like, yeah, people that are facing a life-threatening illness, we'll put them in the front row of their favorite event. And from there, it was just immediate. Like the floodgates opened and we started. Now, if I back up even further to the purpose of that, when you start digging into, well, the metaphor itself, or why did front row show up for me, you actually have to go back a couple months prior to that, which was the Jason Mraz concert in Philadelphia, where I was in the back row and I saw some people really living it up in the front row. And I remember sitting there thinking, God, we're all here in this venue. We're all listening to the same performer. We're all in the same, perhaps, moment, if you will, of life. And yet, if I look around, everybody's having a different experience. Somebody's checked out, somebody's engaged, somebody's right wishing they were anywhere else other than there. And other people are like, this is the best moment of my life. And I was like, this is how life works. We get to choose whether or not we, get into the front row. And there was a lot of, in my life, I could look and I go, man, there's so many moments when I just take whatever seat's given to me. I kind of just, I sit in the back, I watch things happen. I'm not really part of the experience. I'm not showing up. I'm not giving love. I'm not expressing myself fully. And that's when living life in the front row really started to hit me, was that I wanted more of that. I wanted more courage. I wanted the courage to stand and sing and participate in the way that I saw these women up in the front row doing, like, leading the group, changing the temperature of the room.
Yep.
And I think that that was it. So all that's the impetus. All that is the foundation of how we got to the idea. And then it's a matter of like getting your friends together when you care about something. And if you get your friends together and you talk about what you want to do and you have enough energy around it, then stuff starts to move.
Absolutely. I have a question about those women who are in the front row. So they're in the front row. What is it about them that's telling you that they're living life in the front row, that they're having a good time?
It's a spirit, it's an energy, it's you know, that it's all of it's what they, it is definitely the energy by which they bring to a situation. Now, here's the cool thing. I think I've evolved as a person to realize that not everybody is extroverted. Not everybody expresses themselves the same way. People can be really, really happy and not express it on their face or through dancing or through singing. That just happened to be the way they were expressing it in that moment. For me, I'm a very visual person. I'm a very auditory learner. So I see, I heard, I felt the energy. But that's just one way we express our joy and our happiness. So I by no means think that you're not having a good time at a concert if you're not singing and dancing.
Right.
But I think it's one of the ways we naturally express ourselves, you know, and I think that's, that was what was obvious to me.
This word keeps coming to my mind when because I'm a visual person too. And I just keep thinking about what those women look like when they were in the front row. And for me, that word is authenticity.
Mm.
And that speaks to me because for much of my life, I've always been a really authentic person. I've always felt like an authentic person, but I am incredibly empathic, and my empathy has led me to be different things that I needed to be for different people, depending on what they needed, not depending on what I needed. And it's the running joke between Bex and myself that I could go to the grocery store and walk out being the bridesmaid in that cashier's wedding, right? Because I've just engaged with them and I've talked with them and connected with them in a really beautiful way. But my authenticity really started to come out when I started to embrace who am I and what is it that Erin wants and needs to live life in the front row, while still caring about others, but also recognizing that my own internal talents and my own internal strength and sort of putting myself out there, regardless of what others were going to think about it, really allowed me to embrace some of those front row moments, that sort of appreciation for life and for what it is even more. Does that hit you in any way?
Yeah, for sure. I think that there is, for somebody to sing and dance in public, a lot of times you have to, you think about that quote, dance as if nobody were watching, right? And it's because it taps into, like, I think this junior high fear of like going to a dance and being out there and doing the wrong dance move, being judged by others. And I think that we have this natural piece as humans where we worry that if we move our bodies the way we want to move our bodies, people will judge us. That's not a cool dance move. You're not a good dancer. We just expose ourselves. And when we sing, oh, you're not a good singer. So quiet yourself. So don't express yourself. And I think that learning to, figuring out how we fit into the greater picture, how we can express ourselves and be respectful of our environment and know that we're not always alone, that we're part of a big chemistry experiment that, there's a lot to unpack there, but ultimately, how can we express ourselves fully and yet, and still be conscious of other people? Like I remember you start really traveling down this metaphor of living life in the front row, there's so many things you start to consider. Like I can literally talk for hours about this. I have taken the deepest dive into this idea, because also when you stand up and you sing, somebody in that room that's going to be like, sit down, you're blocking the view. Right. Okay. Well, they might have a point, right? If you stand and sing and you block somebody's view, is that bad? Like, am I being inconsiderate of the person behind me? You go, no, you're a leader. You should stand and let them stand. And now everybody's standing, right? You give them well, what if that person can't stand?
Yeah.
Now are you an asshole? Like, I mean, what if, and by the way, you just go on and like, well, what if, you know, what if you're dominant? What if you're taking away from the experience? Like they want to watch the person, not you. You go, but yeah, but what if the singer, what if I'm giving all the energy to the singer and they're performing better for everybody because I'm standing, because I'm engaged? Like you can, and here's the thing, this is just what life is about. It's always a yes and. It's like, is all of that possible in one moment? Yeah. Can people be getting their feelings hurt? Yeah. Can people be inspired? Yeah. Can you be hurting somebody and helping somebody all at the same time? Yeah. Like all of it. It's all true. Every single piece of it. The dark, the light, it's all there. It's all, and that is a perfect metaphor for how we live our lives. Yeah. Well, I don't want to be in the front row, Jon. Your metaphor sucks because I want to be on the stage, man. Your metaphor is like being a spectator. You talk about being a participant. Like I want to be, I go, right. I get it. Sometimes in life you should be on stage. And sometimes in life you should just stop talking, stop hogging the spotlight, put somebody else on the stage. You should actually take a back seat for a moment and let them shine. Maybe you need to just witness somebody for a change. Like, I mean, there's just so many things, right? There's so many pieces to this, but it's not meant to be the metaphor that describes every element of life perfectly and the only way we need to be. It's a metaphor of one season of life, one moment of life. It's a consideration of how we engage in any situation in our life. So we talk about getting close to the people, places, thoughts, and things that make you come alive and that you will help them come alive. So it is a proximity metaphor more than anything else. It's and it's not even whether or not you're in the actual front row, because people are like, I don't even like being in the front row. The 10th row is the best. I go, we learn that too. Certain venues, the 10th row is the front row experience. And are there benefits to being in the back row? Tons of them. I remember being at a Cirque du Soleil show and I was in the back row and I'm like, this is way better than the front row to be in the back. Like you see everything. When you're in the front row, you only see a piece of it. Wow. So this is just about what's your front row. Yep. Who's to determine whether that's 20 feet away from the stage, 50 feet away, 100 feet away? So then the question becomes, what's your front row look like? Yep. It goes on and on and on. Yep. We came up with the metaphor we wrote about in the book of who's in your front row, thinking about your life as like who you give time to, who's showing up for you in your life. Yep. Who are the people that if you could only give tickets in your life to 3 to 5 people, because there's only 3 to 5 center front row seats in a concert. That's it. In the whole concert, there's only 3 to 5 center front row seats. You could have 1,000 people in your life. You could have thousands of people you meet, but who are the first 3 to 5 people that you would want to give those tickets to because of how they show up for you? That's what we're doing all the time, by the way. We are giving tickets to people, and we have people in our front row that we should move back. And we have people that we put in the back row, we should move forward by how much time and energy and love and attention and how we are playing to them and how they are supporting us, you know, in our lives. Absolutely. Just so much. I know. I love it. I absolutely love it, because my original question to you was going to be, how do you live life in the front row? That's the wrong question. That's not the question. I can ask you specifically how you live life in the front row, but what I'm most interested in is not how you live life in the front row. How do you know that you are day in and day out living life in the front row? What do you feel? How do you know? Because, and let me just frame that a little bit further. My guess is that there's plenty of people who embrace the fact that they love life and they love their own life and they love what they do for themselves or for others. But to put into words how you're able to know on a consistent and regular basis if you are either in that zone or out of that zone of living life in the front row is something that then everyone can take and look at their own life and say, do I feel like that? Does that make sense to me? Yeah. So that's my question. Yeah. So first, let me say, I don't think you're supposed to be in the front row at every moment. I think that being in the front row is actually the reason it's special is you're not there all the time. You know, it's just like, I can pick 1,000 things I like to do, and I can make an argument why I shouldn't do it all the time. Right. I also don't want to experience the same emotion all the time. I want to experience the highs and the lows. That's the full spectrum of the human experience. I want to experience sad days and great days. I want it to rain, and then I want it for the sun to come out. So I actually don't want all of the same experience. However, if we play into the idea that being in the front row is being engaged, like if that's how we defined it, was that being in the front row is being engaged. If being in the front row is being aware of yourself and your surroundings and how that feels and what's going on, that's a argument for self-awareness. So not every show is going to be the same. Even if you went to see your favorite band, right? Same band, different venue, perhaps different day. You might be feeling off one day, you might be feeling on the other. One time you go with this friend, it's more fun than if you went with this other friend, right? There's so many ways to experience even seemingly the same moment, the same band, the same venue, the same whatever, because there's so many variables. But all that means is, am I aware, right? Am I aware of myself, my emotional state, and how that interacts with all of what's happening around me? So if there was a way to know, how am I doing on a day-to-day basis, it would have to be of checking in with yourself and noticing the feelings within you, the sensations both in and around you. This is a meditation I learned from my friend Juliana Ray, where she was like, see, hear, feel. It's called noting. So you just check in and you're like, what do I see? What do I hear? What do I feel? And by the way, all of those you can experience from within yourself and outside. You can feel something internally. You can also feel the wind on your skin. You can see things in your mind through your imagination, but you can also see them in the real world, if you will. You can hear things. You can hear voices in your head. You talk to yourself, and you can hear, the sound of the air conditioning unit humming in the background. The more that we can become aware of ourselves and our surroundings, and then what is our relationship to all those things? That's really what we're talking about, by the way, is what is our relationship to all those things? Well, then we get to assess, do I want more or less of this? That's ultimately what we're always doing. Do I want more or less of this? Do I lean into it? Do I step away from it? No, how, and I mean, this gets very philosophical, but living life in the front row, when I go back to, if I have to simplify it, it is, how are we engaging in any given moment? That's really what it is for me. How am I engaging in any given moment?
Yeah. It's reminding me of something my mom has said my whole life, which is, good job, kid. You're not just taking up space on this planet.
Yeah.
And she'll say it after some big, profound event in my life, but she'll also say it, after something that seems so small or not super important, right? But is just sort of acknowledging that you're here and you're present and you're given this opportunity. And many who have come before you would give anything to be here to experience this, and they can't. And that is the torch that you carry in this life, to not just be taking up space. How are you here? How are you present? How are you aware?
Yeah.
How are you with?
Yeah.
Around you. And
so what I would also say to that is, I love the spirit of that. I understand I feel like I understand what she's complimenting you on, right? And I love that. And to me, this is a yes and thing. There's also a piece of that where it's like, we can also simply occupy space, and that can be valuable, because some people can't just be. They can't just be there in space without doing something. They have a constant need to achieve. They have a constant need to make every moment the best that it could be. And that comes from a place of not enough. Not like, if I don't produce, I'm not worthy of just being here and being in this space. And yet there are people who are wrestling with and struggling with perhaps something that happens in their life where they were once perhaps mobile, and now they had the use of their legs. They no longer have use of their legs. They might feel they can do less. They might feel that way. And they learn to accept and surrender to what is. Somebody who is in a hospital bed, and they might start to feel like all they're doing is taking up space. And yet when we can learn to have a relationship with both being and doing, I think that is, and I say all that simply to have an interesting conversation, not to prove your mom wrong by any means, because it's not wrong. It's more of like a yes. And I also see this side of it too. And it's probably not even that she was saying that the other side didn't exist. She's just pointing out one example, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful example.
Yeah. But I think what I love the most about these types of conversations that we have is the level of acceptance that you always have for whatever is going to happen or be present.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, you have to have the rain, you have to have the sunshine. You have to be in the front row, but you have to appreciate the people who are in the back row. And I do think that there's this common tendency to think I have to be in the front row because life is definitely best in the front row and all of those others are secondary, right? Every other part of that experience is just not as worthwhile. And there's so many different places in life that I see this play out. But what I love about what you're saying is that it's about the relationship of where you are in relation to where you are in the world, in that space, in that experience. And that doesn't have a good, bad, best, better qualifier on it. It just is.
That's right.
And to just be and to have it be just is a beautiful and honorable space, because in that space, you're accepting of all that it is in its entirety unconditionally, without judgment, with pure acceptance. And I can't even imagine a space where we're all living that life in the front row, where we're all always around us. The guy in the back who's yelling that you're taking up space, that you turn around and you're like, I am, man. I am.
Right.
And
Yeah,
so
that's
are
right.
you. You know, and we're here, and I love that. And come on up here, right? Or switch spots with me, or whatever that acceptance looks like in that moment. That's a beautiful space.
Yeah. Yeah. I had this experience at an event with my wife where we were all together. We're in this room. It was crowded. This guy comes over and he asked to very politely to sit down, like where we were, kind of in our space. And I kind of shrunk myself a little bit, and I got really uncomfortable to make room for him. And I realized he came in, he was super comfortable, took up all of his space. And interestingly, what happened was I got angry, but what I realized when I was reflecting was I was angry at myself for shrinking who I was to allow him to have space. So it was this was very much about a valuing myself and my place in the world. That's what we're really getting at here.
Yep.
And then what happened the second night, it was at this event we were at. I had this opportunity where this person came over, and it was the same situation, except I moved my leg just like I had the night before. And this person turned around and said, it was a woman, very sweet woman. She goes, honey, you take all the space you need. She saw me kind of shrink again. She's like, you take all the space you need. And it was such a powerful moment for me of not wanting to dominate other human beings, not wanting to take more than my share, more and more and more. I want more for me, more land, more money, more whatever, right? It's not that. It was that I have a place on this planet. I belong here. There's an amount of space that I can hold for myself because I'm worthy, right? Because I am worthy. I don't need to shrink and force myself to hurt so that somebody else can be okay.
Absolutely.
Not right. That was I don't have to self-sacrifice. I can actually lead and say, look, I'm going to hold my space, and man, you're valuable too. You hold your space. We can even share space, right? We can have our spaces bump up, but we're worthy of the space that we are holding for ourselves and each other.
And then she said to you, she invited you into your own space and encouraged you to be there.
That's right.
That's a ticket holder right there. Well, that's one of those 3 to 5 people that you want next to you at the show.
That's right.
She invited you into that space and then empowered you to take it up.
That's right.
Even if it was going to impact her, even if she was going to have less space, right? Yeah. That part is also beautiful, so that even if you yourself aren't feeling like you're taking up your space or living your best life or living life in the front row, can you at least be the person who says you take up all the space you need?
Yeah.
And what does that look like?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And encouraging and caring. Yeah. And there's so many ways that we can participate in this front row experience, even if we ourselves are not the people who are in that front row. And I find that beautiful and powerful and an amazing responsibility and privilege, you know, all in one, to do those things.
And the thing I'll say also is that when you spend enough time in this metaphor, and when you think a lot about living life in the front row, you'll find that you can poke holes in your own argument. You can make an argument for something, and then you're like, there's a hole in that. Like, I can poke a hole in that. And you go, after 17 years, you see, you mentioned earlier, right? Like, after you get to this point, after 17 years, what might have changed? What I realize is that all of it is true. All of it is there. Every piece of it, even the duality, the contrast, the paradox, the parts that contradict each other. You go, I used to spend a lot of time trying to resolve the contradiction. And now I just accept the contradiction. I go, oh, all of it's there. The light and the dark, the yes and the no, the yin and the yang, the up and the down, the left and the right. Everything is there. It's all present right now in this world. So much joy, so much suffering, all at the same time in any given moment. Like, this yes and became where I found peace in all of this, was not trying to land on one result or one definition or one outcome or one consistent theme that couldn't have holes poked in it. And I'm like, everything can have holes poked in it. Everything has a counter argument. On the other side of every truth is another truth. Yep. And so that's it. It's a lot of just staying in the mystery of it all and remaining curious and seeing how many other ways can we look at this? How many other ways can we perceive this? And then enjoy poking holes, or when somebody else pokes a hole, you're like, it's new. I didn't see that before. That's really cool. Let's play with that.
Love it. I love that. The last thing I'll say, because I know you got to run, is my hope is to re-engage this community of people that you and friends of yours pulled together so many years ago to create this meaningful impact for those facing critical health challenges. And I'm very clear that re-engaging them through this sort of Jon Vroman thought of what is living life in the front row and what does this mean, and all that you have been for all of these 17 years is a really important part of where we're going. But to your statement about acceptance and just it is what it is, we also have to accept that other people are coming into this experience now and are also trying to define for themselves, what is this new level of front row foundation, and how do we connect with what it used to be, but how do we also continue to create it into what it's going to be in the future?
For sure.
And I'm wanting to engage this community in that discussion, not of front row 2.0, but on front row continued.
Yeah.
The spirit of that metaphor and what we've been talking about today. And so my question for you would be, how do I do that? We as a community engage in this discussion when we already have the basis of people who certainly live life in the front row, know how to give to others, but how do we take that one step deeper with them to help them participate in that and connect back with us?
I think looking into history books, there's so much wisdom, right? This is why people study history, civilizations and great leaders and you hear people say like, I want to read books that have stood the test of time. I want to read books that have been around for a long, long time, because there's a reason for that. Why is that? What's in it? I think when you look back and you go, what are the patterns? What was sticky of the past? What worked? Those are brilliant, pieces of history to study. I feel like there's a lot of wisdom there. So yeah, we should always look back and ask what worked and what traditions do we want to bring forward. John Berghoff used to say, the best of what was, is, and could be. It's the study of the best of what was, what is, and what could be. And so when we then building anything, I think I've always been a big fan of get 3 to 5 people that want to build with you. And now you have a nucleus of something, but you need your 3 to 5, whatever those are. Maybe that's staff, maybe that's volunteers, maybe it's board members, maybe it's donors, whatever it is. Maybe it's just good energy people who, right, will come together. But I think every great movement or cause or organization begins with a handful of people who all say, this is what we want to do collectively. No one person, ever gains traction on their own. It's always with that first follower, that concept, that who's our core, who's our nucleus. Every time I ever throw an event, I do anything, I go, who's my 3 to 5 people? Who are the anchors that are like, no matter what, even if nobody else shows up, the 5 of us are going to have a party, right? And it would be great if we got a 6th, 7th, or 700th person. But if it's just the 5 of us, we're going to have a great time, and we're going to do this no matter what happens. And then that has contagion to it and momentum. And that's the start of the snowball that begins to roll downhill. It feels effortless because you're building with friends and you're bouncing ideas off each other. And like, I'm not doing this all alone. Like anytime I've got 3 to 5 people and it's the right people and they're all willing to kind of carry their load, every camping trip, every game night, every vacation, every whatever it is, fill in the blank, becomes way more exciting. And then even when you have problems, like, you're on a road trip and you get a flat tire, you got the right 3 to 5 people, that's even fun. That's an adventure, right? Like, I'm just convinced that if I have 3 to 5 of the right people, basically anything is going to be better. Even the dark stuff, even the challenges. So I think that's what it is you got to get your nucleus. And that's advice for any human, right? And that we wrote about this in the Front Row Factor book. This is the core of everything. Everything begins with your 3 to 5 people who you're going to run the race with. And then it is creating a co-created vision with those people, and each of those 5 people taking their talents and their strengths and putting them to full effect. When you do that, then everything is then possible from there. Now, however big it gets, and it's almost not important, whether it's a charity that does 500,000 or 5 million or 50 million. Are we making a difference? Are we helping people? Do we find purpose in our lives? Are we fulfilled? Do we help other people feel fulfilled? Are we filling a need here? When those start getting answered, man, the numbers don't matter. Because you'll always want more. You'll always want to help more people. You'll always want to raise more money. It doesn't matter what it is. And the more money and the more people usually just means, yes, you feel more impact, but you also will feel the challenges of that. So people have to be careful what they wish for,
Right.
I know people that run charities that are huge, and that doesn't make their lives any easier. There's always going to be the challenge of building, the challenge of scaling, the challenge of maintaining. And when you have a lot, you also have a lot to lose. So when you have all of a sudden have millions of dollars of donors, you have a lot to lose in that moment. So there's just challenges all along the way, which is why having your core crew is the most important part.
Yeah. I love that. I'm confident that the core crew is within this community. And I can tell you because I've been speaking with people over the last couple of months, and gosh, the heart of this community is something that I have not felt elsewhere in the world.
We got a good crew.
So I appreciate your time as always. I love hearing from you. Like I said, watch that 10-year video if you want to.
Yeah, I will. That's cool.
What the hair used to look like. But
That's
awesome
cool.
meeting with you. Thank you as always for your time. Good to see you, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Erin. See ya.
Bye.